All right. Okay, welcome to our cohort 5. How about all of our cohort 5 give a wave so you'll identify yourselves. Welcome, welcome. Our cohort 5 webinar presentations. These are just a small glimpse of their longer presentations. So these are 15 to 20-minute presentations of their final project, which was given to their peers a couple of weeks ago, and they were about 90 minutes to 2 hours long and very in depth. So this is just a little bit of a peek into the amazing work that they've been doing over the last couple of years in this program and in the practicum. My name is Christy Manuel, and Felicia Tomasco is also here. Give a wave again, Felicia. We are the co-directors of YogaFit for Healthcare, and we are super proud of our students that are still in the program and our recent graduates. So, and again, we thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. Everybody will receive a recording in the next couple of days. Everyone that is signed up will receive this recording. So again, just to know, if you would like to turn your camera off, because this will be distributed to the public, you have that choice. All right, so we are going to start the presentations. We have 5 presentations today. At the end, you'll be able to ask questions. Our first presenter is Beth Chisholm, and her title of her project is Releasing the Weight of the World. Doesn't that sound great? And Beth, I'm going to spotlight you, so you can go ahead and turn on your presentation and say hello.
Hello. Are you seeing my presentation?
Yep.
Okay.
And we see the little ones on the side.
You see that? Okay, I'm gonna turn that into. I'm just moving multiple screens here. How's that?
Looks the same.
Oh, it looks the same.
Yep. Now it's a little bit bigger, but we only see partial.
How's that?
Same. Oh, there we go. That's perfect. There it is. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So I will start then. Hi there, my name is Beth Chisholm. I would like to acknowledge that I am zooming in from the traditional territories of the Kwanlin Dun and the Ta'an Gwich'in Council in beautiful Whitehorse, Yukon, where I raised my family and learned from the lands and the people here. Thank you for attending this presentation. So I'm going to be talking about yoga therapy for upper back and shoulder pain. And before I get into my presentation, I was presented something to another class that I'm a teacher for, where it was something produced by the Cleveland Clinic. And it's a little video, and it shows people in the hospital. And there are these little captions beside each person talking about what that person is walking around and experiencing in their day-to-day life. And I want us to sort of have an idea of what are the things that our clients are walking in with? What burdens are they carrying on their shoulders? What weight are they carrying around with them? What weight are we carrying around on our own shoulders? And most importantly, how can yoga help to release some of the weight of the world that we're carrying around? So to talk about my client, I will just say that this is still a client that is in process. This is a late 40s male who presented with chronic pain and stiffness in the area of the thoracic spine and shoulders, as well as ongoing life stress. The client attributed their pain and stiffness to both office work and poor posture while sitting at their desk. And one of the significant findings from the initial assessment was a very exaggerated forward flexion of the head and neck. And of significance in this person's past medical history is a near-death experience that happened about 20 years ago. And I'll relate why this is significant for this case in particular. At present, 7 sessions of yoga therapy program have been delivered with a focus on pain and stress reduction. So as mentioned before, this client was experiencing upper back and shoulder pain. And what we know is that upper back is a significant cause of chronic pain and disability, and shoulder pain is the 3rd leading cause of musculoskeletal related hospital visits. Upper back and shoulder pain impacts many of the structural components of the areas where pain is being experienced, including the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, the bones, as well as the possibility of nerve involvement. Through the lens of Ayurveda, back pain is referred to as Kati Graham, and this results from a Vata imbalance. Interestingly enough, shoulder pain is also the result of a Vata imbalance, and this is referred to Apa Bahuka. Looking at approaches to treatment through the Western lens, typically when we're looking at musculoskeletal pain, upper back and shoulder pain, usually the first tool in the toolbox will be something like a pharmacotherapeutic, such as over-the-counter pain medication, or maybe we're dealing with stronger opioid analgesic medication. There could be other therapeutic agents that are prescribed, such as steroids, even maybe neuromodulators to help with if there's any sort of nerve involvement. There may be recommendations for things like physiotherapy or improvement in body mechanics. Massage might also be recommended and employed. Sometimes there is the need to repair structural damage through surgery, and there's also the possibility of anesthetic nerve blocks. Eastern approaches tend to be more holistic, looking at restoring both harmony and balance to all systems of the person. And what we know is yoga is a holistic practice. And from the literature, we know that yoga can be of benefit to reducing MSK pain, helping to manage stress, which can be associated with pain as well as exacerbate pain, and can also enhance overall feelings of well-being. So the case presented as having a history of chronic upper back and shoulder pain, as well as ongoing life stresses related to family, as well as work responsibilities. A brief pain inventory conducted at initial assessment revealed about 2 out of 10 pain, with the highest pain in the past week of being around a 4. Pain was interfering with general activities, mood, and enjoyment, but only at about a 1 out of 10. And the ability to perform normal work and maintain relationships was, again, both only about a 1 out of 10. Pain was, however, interfering a little bit more with sleep, and the client rated the impact as being a 3 out of 10. Beck's anxiety inventory was also employed because the client expressed that they were experiencing some increased stress in their life and some anxiety, as well as the stress and anxiety manifesting as irritability. And so however, the Beck's inventory only came out with a total score of 2 out of 10, revealing low anxiety. The client feels that their diet and exercise could be improved, as they also have a lifelong tendency to gain weight. And they work in a leadership role, which is in a very, very stressful and dangerous occupation to begin with. Looking further at the past medical history of this client, negative for any significant injuries or mechanism of injury that would be leading to the chronic upper back and shoulder pain, no chronic diseases that had been diagnosed, and was not taking any prescription medications. The client was self-managing their pain with anti-inflammatories just over the counter and stress with CBD oil. The client had experienced osteopathic and chiropractic treatments in the past, but with only real temporary relief of their pain. The client of significance noted that they had a near-death experience in their 20s while mountaineering. During this experience, they believed that they would die, and they were hypothermic for many hours. They were barely conscious when they were rescued. And in fact, the rescuers believed that they would be extracting a body rather than a person who was alive. And the client was very lucky, though. They didn't sustain any long-term physical injuries anyways, but they also never sought any counseling and were somewhat reluctant to discuss the prospect of seeking counseling in the future, or the impacts that this trauma may have had on their general well-being at the present moment. So the physical assessment, the client is noted to be tall, male, muscular build, dark hair, olive skin tone, really much a kapha, pitta dosha, muscular, but with that tendency to gain weight, leadership role, somebody who's going to be the rock of the family, very stable. They were noted to walk on their heels with decreased plantar flexion, feet were externally rotated with low arches. Knees were within normal limit, hips were in a neutral position with the left iliac pressed slightly higher than the right. A lateral view of the spine reveals a flattened lumbar area with slight kyphosis. The client is left hand dominant with hands internally rotated and in a forward position. The left shoulder was noted to be slightly higher than the right, And the head, as mentioned earlier, slightly tilted to the right and in a very pronounced forward position. Continuing on with the physical assessment for asanas, a client was noted to be stiff with all asanas as well as poor proprioception. And this was something that would show up even in our therapy sessions where the client would require extensive cueing, mirroring, and modeling, and sometimes even then had difficulty moving their body into the shape of the asana. It was noted that their hands did clasp and chest expansion. Arms would raise to 180 degrees without pain, but would report stiffness throughout all range of motion of the cervical spine, and then also stiffness in all movements of the spine with decreased rotation to the left. They tended to have good core engagement in things like plank, for example, but were stiff in that upper back area, particularly between the scapula in things like cobra and upper dog. Also decreased external rotation and abduction of the upper arm in cow's face pose, and then decreased internal rotation and adduction, bilaterally when in cow's face pose. They were really unable to touch their fingers or even come close. There was about a 5 to 6 inch distance bilaterally. And then when they were in a supine position, it was noticed that their wrists hung in supine cactus. They had a pronounced shoulder lift and arms not in 45 degrees while in reverse cactus. And also, but on the plus side, their shoulders and arms were flush in supine chest expansion out in a T. And then when in a Y, they felt like they had a knot-like sensation in the shoulders, but also reported that that felt good and there was some release along the lateral sides of the body. So the client came to yoga therapy with really kind of 2 goals that were interrelated, and that was to relieve their upper back and shoulder pain. Upon assessment and looking at the information gathered from the initial intake as well as a physical assessment, what I suspected was that the client was experiencing a significant amount of stress that was exacerbating the pain that they were experiencing in the upper back and shoulder area, and that likely that was leading to also they also had a misaligned posture that likely was also exacerbating their pain. And I suspected that the underlying reason for this was that the client was in a long-term sympathetic nervous system engagement, fight or flight response from the unresolved trauma that they had 20 years ago. So really what I wanted to do, though, in thinking about this client, thinking about their wishes, was to meet them where they were at. The client was, like I said before, hesitant to address their trauma directly or to work on it at the moment. And I wasn't prepared to impose my goals on the client. Rather, we would work on ways to help to rebalance the nervous system a little bit and maybe help to address some of the underlying causes of their pain and stress. And then at a future time, thinking about the continuum of health, if this client wanted to address their concerns with their past history of trauma, they would be able to do this when the time was right for them. So our therapy sessions, the plan is 8 sessions over about a 3-month period, give or take, and really to focus on helping to restore a sense of safety and self-efficacy. A few techniques to do this, helping to balance the chakras, especially 1 through 5, also to help stimulate the vagus nerve, moving away from that sympathetic nervous system response to more of that rest and digest parasympathetic involvement. Also, full body asana to help release some of the held tension, aid in pain and stress management, but really, again, keeping an eye out and being mindful of the client's limitations and the pain they were experiencing. So tailoring the practices to make sure that they were back and shoulder friendly, but also that they were as tolerated. Also looking at some grounding postures for asana, such as child pose, and then some exercises to help strengthen the deep front line, such as toe tapping. Again, thinking about the forward head position, just trying to get the client to develop and cultivate a bit of a sense of body posture. We worked to help realign this head position using a block behind the head. And this was done in several different asanas that we used. And the focus really was, rather than having the head push forward and the weight of the block, it was to draw the head and neck back towards the block, having to strengthen both the neck muscles, but also develop that sense of the head being more aligned with the shoulders. And one of the things that I noticed towards the end of our assessments, or pardon me, towards, like I said, we're still, the sessions are still ongoing, but one of our more recent ones was that the client, when asked to stand in mountain pose, for example, was doing some of the self-corrections that they had been cued to do, such as aligning the head over the shoulders. Also, some practices to help with some relaxation and some restorative practices, some meditative practices, providing an opportunity for the client to learn that they can have some control over tension, but also being able to release through tense and release exercises, shavasana to help integrate some of the practices and provide an opportunity for rest, and then yoga nidra also to help with some of the deficits in the client's sleep quality. Pranayama to help regulate some of the breath and stimulate the vagus nerve. So really keeping it simple. This was not a client who was particularly willing to try a bunch of different things or really open to maybe some of the more elaborate pranayama practices that there are. So just bringing in things like dirga. One thing that the clients, or I found interesting with the client, was that they were open to Brahmari pranayam. So really, again, helping to stimulate that vagus nerve, shifting out of the sympathetic nervous system engagement. We also employed HRV using exercises using heart math, again, to improve and promote relaxation and improve coherence. And then, interestingly enough, so one of the things the client identified when they began working with me at their initial assessment was that there was this tremendous sense of responsibility to their work and to their family. And what they struggled with was that often on the weekends, they would feel that their stress levels would go up. And like I said earlier, this would manifest in things like irritability. And one of the reasons why was that they felt this tremendous sense of responsibility to their kids, to give their kids a really good experience and, to show up for their children. And rather than this being something that was fun and playful, it actually just added to the burden that this individual is experiencing, that sort of weight of the world again on the shoulders. And so we were able to actually incorporate their children into the first 2 therapy sessions. And I had a couple of angles that I was taking here. And the first one was to make yoga in itself, to disarm it a little bit for this client, to make it a little bit less intimidating, something that was easy and that could be funny and that could be playful, but also to have them be in an interaction with their children where there wasn't that sense of responsibility, where they could release some of that weight, where they could engage with their children without having to have a plan or it was going to look a certain way. And so we invited them in for the first couple of sessions. Again, this is not something that would necessarily be possible with all clients, but it was of great value to both my client, and the children seemed to enjoy the process as well. So as mentioned earlier, this is an ongoing client. We have yet to complete our sessions. Some of the things that were noticed or noted during our therapy sessions for outcome was that the client really did have a lot of difficulty in self-expression related to emotions and their emotional state. This showed up in quite a dramatic fashion where even after repeat prompting, when I asked how a client was feeling and trying to rephrase the question and invite in more open-ended questioning, the client really struggled to even attach one or express one word that would have an emotional connotation to it. So with some insight into connection to Manamayo Kosha and maybe some imbalance going on there. Something that if I was working with the client on a more longer term basis, I might want to dig into, but just given that there was some resistance to being able to tap into that immediately, I thought this is something on that continuum of health that can maybe be addressed at some point, and we'll do other practices that'll help prepare the client to be able to access those emotions at a later time. Noted that pain did persist in the areas that the client initially came in with concerns about. However, in one session, for example, a pre-assessment of the pain was rated as an 8 out of 10, and it went down to a 6 out of 10 post-assessment. The client also was reporting reduced feelings of stress after our sessions were completed. And after the heart math session, the client really enjoyed it and reported that they had no stress whatsoever after completing a heart math exercise. It was also noted that the client was consistently falling asleep during yoga nidra, and I feel like I always have to qualify this. Yes, we're not wanting our clients to necessarily fall asleep. However, it was clear that this is what the client was needing in that moment, and more importantly, they were able to relax. Their nervous system was calm enough to let go, to allow themselves to get into that vulnerable position of sleep. They also reported that their overall sleep quality had improved. And also, like I mentioned before, their head position, that forward positioning persisted, but I was observing that they were starting to self-correct without even cueing. The plan with this client is to continue on with yoga therapy sessions and to end our final session with a post-physical assessment, as well as reassessment of the brief pain inventory, and as well as a final back anxiety inventory. And then again, I would readdress that if this client was willing to or had any interest, that would recommend follow-up to some type of counseling to address the past trauma. But again, meeting the client where they're at, leaving this as an option for them to pursue when the time is right for them. So as mentioned before, we know that yoga therapy or yoga has been shown to help relieve different musculoskeletal pain and also to aid in stress management. There was an 8-session yoga therapy plan that I developed to address the upper back pain and shoulder chronic pain of this client, while also aiding in their stress management. The client did have that significant history of trauma that was never addressed through psychological counseling or other therapeutic means. And my suspicion was that from long-term sympathetic nervous system engagement due to that unresolved trauma, that the client was in that self-protective posturing, and that this was contributing or even possibly the underlying mechanism causing the upper back and shoulder pain. Ongoing life stressors related to work, as well as their profound sense of obligation to their family, were likely exacerbating the pain, which was culminating in feelings of carrying the weight of the world. Over a 3-month program, the client has consistently demonstrated a reduction in pain scores pre and post yoga therapy sessions. And also there's reduction in subjective articulation of stress post-therapy sessions as well. As I mentioned, the trauma may be something that the client might want to address in the future. However, we did not actively work on it during our therapy program. But what we do know is that yoga therapy may be able to provide opportunity for this client and clients like this to achieve a greater sense of safety, help to relieve stress as well as pain, help to restore rest, as well as improve a general sense of overall well-being. Here are some of my references. And here's my contact information. Please feel free to contact me if you'd like some further information. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for listening.
Fantastic, Beth. I'll just leave this up for a second so that people can screenshot it if they want to get a hold of you. And just a reminder that you'll be able to ask questions at the end of the 5 presentations, or you can also contact each presenter individually if you have specific questions that you'd rather ask privately. So fantastic job, Beth.
Thank you.
Interesting presentation. Love to see that. All right, so hopefully everybody's got that screenshot. I'm going to remove your spotlight. And okay, wonderful. All right, our next presenter. Yes, well, let's give her a little applause of our great job. Our next presenter is Stacy Litson, and Stacy is going to be speaking on recovery from breast cancer through yoga therapy. She has a longer title, but I'm going to make her say it.
Yeah, yeah, great. Please bear with me. Like I said, I decided to try new software. Don't ask me why. So if it crashes in the middle of it, I deeply apologize, or I can't even get it going.
I'm gonna spotlight you. That looks good.
You see the full thing?
Yeah, you see, yeah, it looks great.
Woo! Miraculous. Okay, well, we'll
Right.
keep our fingers crossed. It keeps on going.
All right.
I am Stacy Litson, and I'm going to talk to you about recovering from breast cancer treatment, yoga therapy approach to pain control and increasing range of motion. So I just want you to take a moment and journal what is pain and why you think we have it. So we're just going to take a couple moments. In my long one, we spent a lot more time, but I'm just going to give you kind of a few seconds to kind of journal on what is pain and why do you think we have it. For my client, she was a 77-year-old female. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in August 2020. She went through chemotherapy in the fall to try to reduce the size of her tumor. That went from 7 centimeters to 3 centimeters. She was scheduled for 6 chemotherapy sessions, but it was shortened to 3 because her body literally could not handle the chemotherapy sessions. But fortunately, the tumor shrunk enough. She had her surgery in December 2020, left breast mastectomy. The following winter, she went through radiation therapy. And then following that, she was on a course of Herceptin for almost a year, which is a drug therapy to help prevent the breast cancer from coming back. But unfortunately, one of the side effects of Herceptin is heart damage. And unfortunately, she experienced this. So her ejection fraction rate, which measures how well your heart pumps blood out to the rest of your body, was around 48 to 50% while she was going through the treatment. And they actually had to stop the treatment a couple times because of it. The average range is between 54 and 74%. So she was definitely below it. And even this last summer, her reading was at 52%. So it's increased a bit, but it's still not where it should be. She also ended up with cardiomyopathy after the treatments. Client also contracted COVID in 2023, and she still has no taste or smell as a result. She lost sight of her right eye approximately 40 years ago, so her sensory perceptions are very impacted. She's had vertigo for years and cannot lay down flat or move her head very quickly. She has glaucoma in her left eye, in the eye that she can see. She has a depressed attitude, does not sleep well, wakes in the night, very little joy in her life, lacks purpose and meaning and connection. So even before I did one-on-one therapy with this client, I'd met her back in the spring, and I had her join one of my group yoga classes, a chair yoga class. And after my classes, there's a social time. So it was a huge benefit to her. She saw other people that had other challenges with movement. So she got herself moving because she kind of was motivated by other people in the class. And then she got to have a little social time afterwards. So some facts about breast cancer. In 2022, approximately 28,600 Canadian women were diagnosed with it, and approximately 5,500 died of it. Breast cancer accounts for about 25% of new cases of cancer and 14% of all cancer deaths in Canadian women. 1 in 8 women are expected to develop breast cancer, and 1 in 34 will die from it. The International Association for the Study of Pain includes this as part of their definition. Pain is an unpleasant sensory and an emotional experience associated with or resembling that associated with actual or potential tissue damage. Do you agree with this definition? I just want you to journal on this for a few seconds, because again, I know our time is limited. The Ayurvedic view of pain is pain can be caused by a specific disease or be a symptom. Vata is a dosha primarily responsible for pain because it is closely related to prana, which governs the nervous system and all sensation. From You Can Heal Your Life, pain of any sort is an indication of guilt. Guilt always seeks punishment, and punishment creates pain. Chronic pain comes from chronic guilt, often so deeply buried that we are not even aware of it anymore. And then the yogic view of pain, dukkha. Dukkha can mean pain, suffering, disease, unease, difficult, distress, dissatisfaction, and sorrow. And sukha, concept that means comfort, ease, or even the sweetness of life, as well as happiness and pleasure or joy. Yoga Sutra 2.46, a translation is resolutely abide in good space. In life, we can reside in good space when our prana, our life force, vitality is healthy and balanced. As yoga therapists, we can lead our clients towards sukha, greater balance and peace, with the goal to finding good space and change pain. The kleshas, avidya, ignorance or forgetfulness. Yoga reminds us that our true nature is whole and complete. When we believe that we are mind, body, and or we identify with our emotions, thoughts, and feelings, and we forget our essence as spirit, we allow suffering to enter and overwhelm us. So as yoga therapists, we can help our clients to remember their original goodness and reconnect again and again with their true nature. Asmita, over-identification with the self. From the perspective of a person being a pain experience or having a pain experience, when we have pain, we can over-identify with the pain itself. The pain becomes part of our personality when it lingers. Our pain can easily become the aggressive watchdog for our choices. So we can help our clients cultivate compassion for self and others. Raga, attachment. When pain persists, we become attached to our suffering. Excuse me. This attachment is revealed in our story of suffering, or maybe our attachment to the story of an injury. The hows, whats, and whys of our pain become our attachment to what we feel is outside of our control and therefore keeps us perpetually in the flow of suffering. So we can help our clients in the path of santosha and contentment. Devesha, aversion. Nobody wants pain. In our aversion to pain, we may suppress it, pushing through our limitations and doing our best to not listen to our mind, body, spirit. When it whispers warnings or even when it commands danger is near. Aversion to the painful body can even lead to distortions of body awareness. In the end, aversions can become the catalyst of forgetfulness, and the whole cycle is in a repetitive flow. So we can help our clients develop resiliency. And Abhanavesha, fear. Often referred to as the fear of death, but it can mean fear of the loss of anything to which we cling. Our health, livelihood. The cycle from pain to fear creates even more suffering than the pain itself. Fear can hold us back from potential healing and growth and keep us in perpetual angst, leading to more stress and disease. So we can help our clients foster fearlessness. So I just want you to journal for a few seconds on have the Eastern definitions and views changed your idea of pain. Okay. So client's findings. When I first assessed her, her pain level was an 8 with any range of motion in her shoulders, with a chronic level of 4. She had very limited range of motion in her left shoulder and all planes, and limited range of motion in her right shoulder. Her go-to strategy was to power through the pain or avoid it. But both strategies activate our nervous system into fight-flight response. So we want to treat her so that she learns new strategies so that she's not doing either of those. She did not exercise post-surgery because she did not realize the impact. She was in there during COVID, so she had no support systems coming home. She had no group therapy. She had no group exercise programs, no follow-up. So she did not understand the impact of not doing her post-surgery exercises. And she had very little motivation to do them on her own. She was so tired and weak. Um, and she also had very little body breath awareness. So I just want you to quickly jot down, have you ever had pain and what was your self-talk? So many people going through breast care treatment experience pain. Um, so this could be from the chemotherapy, it could be from the radiation, it could be from the tumor. For my client, she definitely experienced pain. So helping her to find the edge so she didn't power through it or avoid it was a contraindication, as well as avoiding quick movements and just starting slow. Another issue or challenge for these clients is neurological issues. So neuropathy is a loss of sensation or pain associated with damaged peripheral nerves or chemo brain. In my clients, she also experienced chemo brain, although I think she was through it at that time. But she definitely needed things made clearer and slower explanation to her. Um, and just making sure that the instructions were not overly complicated. Glaucoma. So she had glaucoma. So anything with putting her head down, forward, putting any pressure on the eye that she was seeing, we were going to avoid. Vertigo. She also experiences vertigo. So any movements with her head going side to side quickly or down or up, as well as laying supine. So we were avoiding any like quick motion side to side. And lying on her back altogether. Even though she could prop up, it was like at a significant angle. So we just avoided those. Cardiovascular issues. So people with breast cancer treatment often have heart problems such as irregular heartbeat, congestive heart failure, coronary artery disease. Symptoms include shortness of breath on exertion. And my client had, like I said, cardiomyopathy coming out of it. She's also AFib. So we were being very careful to watch her breathing patterns and her exertion levels. Fatigue, my client, as many clients, 70 to 100% experience fatigue weeks, months, years later. My client was still experiencing it 3.5 years later significantly. Not just like waking up, but like all day long. She had very little energy to do anything. So I was very mindful not to overexert her. And then the immune system. So lymphedema refers to swelling in the limb, as well as a result of a lymphatic obstruction or destruction. So for her, again, this also impacted her range of motion. So I had to be cognizant of that as well. So resurrection breath. I just want to take a moment and get everybody grounded. Just get comfortable in your seat. Put your feet on the ground, your hands comfortably in your lap. Close your eyes or cast your glance downwards. And just take a few moments to breathe. Just noticing your breath. And then we're going to inhale through our nose and turning our head to the left. And when we exhale with a, we let go of the past. Returning our head to center and inhaling. Turning our head to the right and exhaling with pursed lips. Allowing the future to remain out of our grasp. Again, returning to center. Inhaling through our nostrils. Turning our head to the left. And letting go of the past. Returning to center and inhaling through our nose. Returning to the right and exhaling through pursed lips. Allowing the future to remain out of our grasp. Just continue in this pattern for a few more breaths. And just finishing off our last. Inhale and exhale, back to center. Slightly nod your head down, returning to a normal breath. And just acknowledging the present moment as the only moment. Okay, so the course design for my client, the objective was to provide tools to assist an individual with chronic pain after breast cancer treatment to decrease pain and increase range of motion in the shoulder area. Her pre and post assessments were pain scale and range of motion. We did an 8-week session once a week for 60 minutes. All the sessions included instructions on increasing interoceptive awareness and physiological regulation. So this was a huge part of the program. Modifications of poses as needed, guidance to use interoceptive awareness as a way to discern whether to continue or modify, and guidance to regulate breath, body tension, pain, mind and body position if there was an increase in pain or discomfort. And this all went around not wanting her to avoid pain and not wanting her to power through it, but getting her to the right edge so we could move her forward. So weeks progressions, weeks 1 to 2, we focused on mobility, flexibility, and stretching, and learning how to move into that sweet spot. Weeks 3 and 4, we focused on mobility, flexibility, and stretching again, and learning how to challenge the edge and poses. Week 5 to 8, we focused on strengthening and unloading the shoulder joints while finding the right edge. Each class, we began with a centering and an intention setting. Week 1, we worked on neck and shoulder movement, moonflower, sunflowers, snow angel on the wall, planks on the wall, downward dog on the wall, flying bird, eagle arm, chest openers, and lateral flexion. Week 2, we added cow face with the strap. Week 3, we added a 90-degree wall movement with her arms, so 90 degrees, and then pushing against the wall. Increase the snow angel rep by 2, and we started wall push-ups. Week 4, we added warrior 1, 2 in reverse. Week 5 and 6, we added a standing twist with raising arms, increased her snow angel rep by 2, increased her push-up rep by 2. Week 7 and 8, we added movements to eagle arms, increased push-up reps by 2. So when we first started out, like Beth, when she was talking about taking her client, putting a block behind their head and trying to push the back of their head in the wall, I initially tried to do that with my client. When we first started, her head was at least as far off as this picture on the right. It was more than a foot off the wall. And she said, oh, it was because, I don't know, the doctor said something was wrong with her neck, and that was the way it was always going to be. After we worked together, her head would have been somewhere between the first and the second picture, so much so that, it was not against the wall, but if she tilted her head backwards a bit, she could touch it. Um, her arm movement, so her left arm, um, a lateral flexion was about 20 degrees before we did our therapy, and it was about 90 degrees post, and she can easily go to 90 degrees like all the time now with no problem and no pain. Right lateral flexion, I guess before when I was doing the earlier presentation, 70 degrees, but then when I looked at this diagram, I say she was closer to maybe 40 or 50 degrees prior, and she improved to probably like 120, 130. So huge improvements in the lateral flexion on both of her arms. She also improved in her breath and body awareness. When we first started, she had a lot of difficulty doing so many of the poses because she literally could not activate or find the muscles or perform the actions. A great example was scapular retraction. When we first started this movement, she could not even find the muscles to do it. But after a lot of practicing cueing, it was instrumental in her improving both her kyphotic posture and her shoulder range of motion. She also had an improvement in her mood because she was able to do so much more. And she had less pain because she had gained more movement and had started to downregulate her nervous system response to pain. And as far as her pain scale, before I said she was like an 8 in range of motion and I think I said a 4 before. We didn't even score this because now she had the tools to discern and regulate pain and prevent getting to that 8. So I just wanted to ask you one last question. How has your opinion of pain changed from this presentation and how? Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can reach me at this website or via email.
Great job, Stacy. I'll just leave this up for a second so people can screenshot it in case they want to contact you. And then just a reminder that if you can ask questions at the end of all 5 presentations. All right, and I'm gonna. Okay, all right. Good job. Great job, Stacy. Good job. All right. I love the reflection on has your opinion changed after listening to the evidence for yoga therapy? Something to think about.
The irony is I never asked, and the prior one or this one has it. We'll just leave it out there in the
That's
ether.
okay. That's okay. All right. Our third presenter tonight is Rowan Brownlow. Another long title. I'm going to give it a go here. When senses go awry, somatosensory deficits after stroke. So another interesting presentation awaits us. And so Rowan, whenever you're ready.
Forgot to unmute myself.
Yeah, that's a good.
Am I spotlighted?
You are spotlighted and we see your side slides as well. So
Yeah, I haven't.
okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
Perfect. Looks great.
Okay, when senses go awry, the impact of somatosensory cortex damage after stroke. So just to let you know that I chose this topic because I have worked the last 18 years with adults with acquired brain injury. And so most of my yoga therapy practicum I have geared towards brain injury. So the brain has to make sense of the world quickly and efficiently while being trapped in the skull. A single sensory input like a loud bang could have many different causes. It could be a door being slammed, a bursting balloon, or a gunshot. The brain asks which of your past experiences produces the closest match to this sound, given the context within the accompanying sights, smells, and other sensory inputs. It runs simulations to prepare your body for the things that you are about to experience, even before you actually experience it. This is a quote from the YogaFit Somatosensory Manual. But what if that part of your brain was damaged and the sensory inputs no longer functioned in a normal way? So before we get into my case study, I just wanted to give a little background on stroke and what the heck is a somatosensory cortex. So just understanding stroke and the types of stroke. A stroke occurs when blood flow to the brain is interrupted. An ischemic stroke, which accounts for 87% of the cases, happens when a blood vessel supplying blood to the brain becomes blocked. A hemorrhagic stroke involves bleeding or in or around the brain, and a transient ischemic attack, or TIA, are temporary strokes with short-term symptoms. Just want to see if I can hide this. There we go. Okay, so some of the effects of stroke on the brain and body. So I just want to point out, these are just some. There are many, many more. So physical effects that can affect various brain regions, including the somatosensory cortex, weakness or paralysis, numbness or tingling, vision problems, balance, speech and language difficulties, pain, swallowing difficulties, fatigue. And then if we look at the emotional and cognitive effects, we have depression, anxiety, memory problems, mood swings, and changes in personality. So now we're going to just talk a little bit about the somatosensory cortex. So the somatosensory cortex is located in the parietal lobe of the brain. The cortex is organized in a somatotopic manner, meaning different body parts are represented in specific areas. And this is often referred to as the homunculus, which you can see in the picture here. Sensory information is relayed through the thalamus, which is in the center of the brain, before reaching the somatosensory cortex, where it is further interpreted and integrated for perception. It is responsible for processing sensory information from the body, including touch, temperature, pain, and proprioception, which is our awareness of location, movement, and action of the body. Damage to this region can lead to a range of sensory deficits, affecting the ability to feel sensations accurately or at all. Things like numbness or tingling, loss of sensation in parts of the body, often on one side, pain, difficulty identifying objects by touch, loss of that proprioception, so difficulty determining the position of the body parts in space, changes in temperature sensitivity, difficulty feeling hot or cold correctly, motor coordination problems, difficulty with fine motor skills or coordination. So it also lies, as you can see in the picture, next to the motor cortex. And oftentimes when there's damage to the somatosensory cortex, there's damage to the motor cortex, which will also affect movement and balance. So my aha moment and my pivot from just stroke to somatosensory cortex deficits. So my initial plan with my client was to focus on all the symptoms associated with stroke. But after taking the somatosensory yoga course in February this year, And we, at this point, had been working together for about 3.5 months. I realized that many of her symptoms were likely related to the somatosensory cortex damage, especially the prickly sensation she has on the left side, called paresthesia. And this might be something I would like to explore with her. I had an aha moment. For AVM, which another thing I will explain in a moment, and stroke were in the thalamus, which is that relay to the somatosensory cortex. So now we get into the case study. This is a study of 61-year-old woman who suffered a hemorrhagic stroke, which is the brain bleed type, in February of 2023, and has ongoing symptoms of damage to the somatosensory cortex. Prior to the stroke, this client was very physically active, including walking 10K each morning, as well as some yoga regularly. She was a manager of a real estate company and had a very active social life. She was presenting with neuropathy and temperature regulation concerns on the left side of the body, including her face, vision impairments, balance concerns, as well as depression and anxiety. She also had high blood pressure, asthma, lower back and neck pain, and emotional regulation concerns. So this was all stemming from the stroke due to an AVM rupture. The neuropathy was also causing constant cold feeling as well as a prickly sensation. The vision impairments were making it difficult to see and read, as well as balance issues from all of this. The neck pain was associated to the vision, and a lot of the left pain was in the cheek and mouth, left hand, and left foot. In our first few sessions, the client was recovering while living with her mother until she could return to her condo. We started our yoga therapy sessions on Zoom at the beginning of October 2023. So as I mentioned, she had an AVM, or an arteriovenous malformation. So this was discovered after the stroke, and it was in the right thalamus. So you can see in the picture where the thalamus is, right in the center of the brain. And just a reminder that that is the relay to the somatosensory cortex. So an AVM, or arteriovenous malformation, happens when a group of blood vessels in your body forms incorrectly. In these malformations, arteries and veins are unusually tangled and form direct connections, bypassing normal tissues. This usually happens during development before birth or shortly after. An AVM is a rare condition and affects around 1 in 100,000 people. And oftentimes when people have an AVM, they don't know until they've had a stroke. So the client was being seen by many, many people, and I'm not going to name off this whole list. I just put it in to show a sense of what it might be like to be overwhelmed, not only with your symptoms, but how many people are treating those symptoms. So you can imagine if you're already not thinking clearly, you're having all these symptoms, but you also have to keep all of these appointments on top of that. So during the initial assessment and intake process reported by the client, some of the areas of improvement were her breath and her breathing, her ability to focus, her energy level, short-term memory, ability to manage stress, feeling no sense of purpose, poor ability to observe thoughts and patterns, and her fine motor skills were impaired as well. During the physical assessment, we noticed that her balance was quite poor, especially on the left side. Her range of motion in the upper body was quite good, within a reasonable normal range. She was able to follow instructions, visual cues, and verbal prompts with slowed down instruction. She was able to get down to the floor and back up with minimal concern. We noted some tightness in the lower body, especially the left side, and perhaps tightness in the fascial superficial back line. So some of the goals that she came up with and some that I added as well was to increase flexibility, strengthen balance, lessen fatigue, decrease anxiety, or at least have better tools to deal with it, support for the emotional regulation. And we also worked on increasing her confidence to move back into her own apartment from living with her mother. There was also talk of a procedure of a localized radiation to shrink the AVM offered to her, because some AVMs are operable, some are not, and hers was not. So this localized radiation was offered to her. It could be life-threatening. However, if successful, could lengthen her life expectancy and lessen the chance of more strokes. So part of working together was supporting her in giving her tools to regulate her emotions, which could help make her make a choice for this procedure. So I'll talk about the plan through the koshas. And for those of you that are joining us tonight that may not be familiar with what koshas are, the koshas are the layers of a person. And the yoga therapy model is typically based on this kosha model, ranging from the physical body all the way out to our bliss or spiritual body. So I'm going to speak about the plan of care in the form of the koshas. So the Annamaya kosha, which is our physical body, the biggest concerns were the eye impairments, the balance and neuropathy or prickly sensation on the left side, and the neck and back pain. First few weeks were trial of various asanas or poses to establish a baseline of physical and mental capabilities, introducing gentle grounding poses such as bridge, cat-cow, flowing gait, mountain pose, chair, supported tree pose, etc. We avoided any inverted poses as it would cause pressure to the head. We did also try some eye yoga, so some eye movements, and over time, we also evolved and started adding some of the somatosensory exercises that I learned in the somatosensory yoga course, starting with the foot drag. So next we have the pranamaya kosha, which is our breath, and our prana is our energy flow in the body. So somatosensory deficits can disrupt the flow of prana. And for her, this led to imbalances in her energy levels, affecting her physical and mental health. So we started with simple basic breaths, like 3-part breath and a longer exhale. And we felt it best to keep it simple with the breath practices to start. Over time, we did Ujjayi, Nadi Shodhana, breath of fire. And when the summer was hot and the client had no air conditioning, we did Shitali breath, which is a cooling breath. We also did some releasing practices like breath of joy, using some sounds like ha, and these were very effective for her in times of stress. After a few months, I started to actually teach her the mechanics of breath when her focus had improved, and she reported knowing this. Next, we have Manamaya kosha, our mind. This was seen as anxiety, depression, and a sense of disconnection from her body. So for this, we ended most of our sessions with a yoga nidra. And for those that are unfamiliar, this is sort of a guided meditation, a rotation of consciousness through the body. And this has worked very well in calming her anxiety. The client reports feeling calmer almost every session. Even if the session started with tears, she has felt much more calm and enjoys the nidras. And just a side note, we also learned somehow the nidras would often warm that left side of the body as well. So that was kind of interesting. So Vijnanamaya kosha, the constant challenge of adapting to a changed sensory world has led to cognitive difficulties or altered consciousness. She has experienced some of this disorientation and connection with her body and mind, leaving her feeling unsafe and not secure in who she is. So the plan of care with this, I combined with Anandamaya kosha. So the client at times has felt disconnected from her world and her sense of purpose. So each week we would pick a card from the Universe Has Your Back deck, which is a deck of affirmations, and the chakra mudra cards. And just for those who are not sure, mudras are kind of a hand yoga. We discuss it at the beginning of each session and hold the mudra while breathing to start the asana part of the session. I then send her the card meanings in an email after each session, and she reports enjoying this and loves using the affirmations. So outcomes, what does the client have to say? Satisfaction. I asked her to do an evaluation of our work together thus far. So we've been working together since last October. We started with 7 sessions and she wanted to continue with more. So I asked her state 1 to 3 things that you can take away from these sessions into your daily life. She said the ability to ground myself and face my fears, to breathe to counteract stress, improvement in balance and flexibility. I asked, do you have a better awareness of your body? She said, yes. Do you have a better awareness of your breathing? Yes. Do you feel better about certain aspects of your life and self than before having these sessions? Yes. Her final comment was, I have been working with Rowan for about a year. With her teachings and practice, she has helped me work through many challenging things. I was so satisfied with Rowan and my work with her that after 7 free sessions with her, asked if we could carry on with a fee for service. It is one of the most important aspects of my week. My awareness, breathing, and balance have improved with her support, and I am grateful. So, outcomes and where are we now? We have met mostly weekly for 1 hour on Zoom since last October 2023. In the first few months, I gave simple homework assignments such as deep breathing for 5 minutes and cat-cow. At one point, a gratitude journal, which she did and saw improvement in her daily outlook. I have observed that her depression has decreased significantly, and she reports her anxiety has also decreased significantly, which she attributes mostly to our sessions. Through our year together, the client has moved back into her condo and has been living there successfully independently. She decided to have the radiation procedure to shrink the AVM, and it was successful. She said she felt so calm that day and felt it was because of the work we did. Before and after the radiation procedure, we did longer yoga nidras to help prepare for her procedure. And when she was unable to do any asana after, to help her stay in a more calm state. We continue to work together and will be trying more of the somatosensory exercises from the somatosensory yoga class. Much of the asana and the few somatosensory exercises we have tried so far have given some temporary relief from the prickly feeling from the neuropathy on the left side. The client also has a Nabaso ball, which is a neurosensation ball, which I have suggested she continue to use every day on her feet. Although she continues to have neuropathy symptoms, she reports the yoga helps. She has been an inspiration to work with, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. She is always open to trying new things. So she lives in Alberta, and the cool thing is her and her mom are coming to Toronto for a visit at the end of this month, and I get to meet her in person. So I'm pretty excited about that. So some key learning and takeaways. So it appears that a combination of yogic practices and somatosensory yoga exercises have been a good approach to lessening the prickly sensation caused by this type of neuropathy and some of the emotional effects a brain injury has involving somatosensory deficits. I also have a stronger interest in learning more and supporting those with somatosensory deficits. And I feel more research has to be done in this area, and I'd like to be the person to do that. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm also excited to say that I learned how to do a QR code, so you can take a picture of this, and or you can just put your camera up to it if you would like to get in contact with me to learn more. Thank you.
I love it, Rowan. Cute QR code.
Yeah.
Great job. Really amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. And really great feedback. I love to hear that feedback from
Yes.
the client. Yeah, satisfaction. Yeah. All right. So again, reminder that we can ask questions at the end. We have two more presenters. So we have still two more amazing presentations to listen to. Our next presenter will be Katrina Khan, and the title of her presentation is Grief Relief.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you. So I'll get my try that again. Sorry.
No worries. Take your time.
There we go. Sure. Yeah. There we go.
Looks good.
Good.
You still see the slides on the side.
Mm. Okay, now?
Yes, looks great. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is a case study in grief in which improved with yoga therapy. So this case study explores the use of yoga therapy to help with symptoms of grief. It addresses the many and fluctuating symptoms of grief and how to meet the client where they are in their journey. We used a health intake, the Beck Anxiety Inventory, depression scale, and the standard physical scale assessment, sorry. Tools used included yoga asana, grief yoga, meditation, mantra, chanting, affirmations, mudra, nervous system resetting techniques, pranayama, journaling, talk therapy, and acts of service. So the client was seeking relief from her symptoms of grief, but also found improvement in dealing with her past trauma, her depression, and overall well-being. This is a brief overview, but I will, as we go through the case study, you'll see that I touch on each of these things as we get into the sessions. I focused on meeting her where she was, and I used many tools so that I could pivot and meet her on any given day in her journey. Okay, so let's just go over a little bit of background on grief. The Western definition, according to the Mayo Clinic, grief is a strong, sometimes overwhelming emotion for people, regardless of whether their sadness stems from the loss of a loved one or a terminal diagnosis they or someone they loved has received. They may find themselves feeling numb, removed from daily life, unable to carry on with regular duties while saddled with their sense of loss. Grief is a natural reaction to loss, and loss is both a universal and a personal experience. Individual experiences of grief vary and are influenced by the nature of the loss. Some examples of loss include death of a loved one, the ending of an important relationship, job loss, loss through theft, or the loss of independence through disability. Mourning can last for months or years. Okay. Grief may transfer to the physical body. So although it's experienced on an emotional level of sadness, grief can transfer to the physical body. It can cause an increase in inflammation, which can make current health problems worse or create new ones. Grief taxes the immune system. It can increase blood pressure and the risk of blood clots, and intense grief can cause something called broken heart syndrome, which is a form of heart disease with the same symptoms as a heart attack. It can cause a variety of other physical and emotional symptoms. Some of them are listed over there on the right. But my favorite quote that really informed a lot of my research was from Megan Devine. Grief affects appetite, digestion, blood pressure, heart rate, respiration, muscle, fatigue, and sleep. Basically everything. If it's in the body, grief affects it. Grief also changes the chemistry in our bodies. So studies in neurobiology show that losing someone close to you changes our biochemistry. There are physical reasons for our insomnia, our exhaustion, our racing heart, respiration, heart rate, and nervous system responses are all partially regulated by close contact with familiar people and animals. These brain functions are all deeply affected when we've lost someone close. So grief changes the way our brains function. Cognitive changes, memory loss, confusion, and shortened attention span are all very common in grief. Some even last for years. So this is our co-regulation system. Our brain functions are determined by our co-regulation system. And when we lose a pet, whatever regulates us, we change, our regulation changes. And that shows up in HRV, or heart rate variability. So individuals like those who are grieving and are experiencing high loads of stress, they may be experiencing high anxiety or depression, and they may have a low HRV, or heart rate variability, or low vagal tone. Again, grief affects all parts of our being, our physical body, our mental, our emotional, everything. So you can see when on the right there, that diagram, the traumatic loss of a loved one through the HPA axis affects the sympathetic nervous system. And then you can see all of the things that can happen in our body. Heart rate goes up, heart rate variability goes down, inflammation goes up, lots of stuff can happen through grief. Okay, Western treatment. We don't have a lot of the rituals in the West, like many other cultures surrounding grieving anymore. There are ways that we do help, support groups, talk therapy, EMDR, but we tend to also give a lot of medications for the symptoms, the anxiety, the depression, or the physical pain that can show up. And yes, physical pain can show up from grief. So instead of treating or helping go through grief, we tend to send to therapy or give medication for the symptoms. And the duration, and this is from the Mayo Clinic as well, mourning can last for months or years. Generally, the pain is tempered over as time passes, as the bereaved adapts to life without a loved one, or to the news of a terminal diagnosis, or the realization that someone they may love, that they love, may die. Now, pain is generally tempered, but it doesn't go away. The people adapt to the new reality. We generally grow around the pain. Of note, if the symptom is overtaxed and stressed before the loss occurs, the effects of grief can be harder or felt more than someone who is in a state of resiliency before loss. So the higher the allostatic load of the person, the more they're going to feel the effects of grief. Eastern definition. In Ayurveda, the Ayurvedic view on death is based on the understanding or belief that the death of the body is not the death of the soul. Each one of us has the opportunity to grieve, to feel deeply, and to reclaim the love of that person, the person who had for us. And this offers us a chance to fill our own hearts with self-love. And once we do this, we can often feel closer to the one who had died. In Ayurveda, there is the belief that the soul is eternal and it's just the body that's gone, and that grief is a natural part of our existence, just as death is a natural part of our existence. You can see on the right that timeline, grief, death, loss, everything is natural and normal. And I liked this in Your Body Speaks Your Mind by Deb Shapiro. She posits that our muscles absorb and respond to tensions and feelings. If they do not relax sufficiently following stress, then the tension accumulates and causes deeper, longer lasting damage. And they've become fixed in a shorter form, a more restricted form. And this frozen emotion becomes a kind of body armor, which further blocks and holds back feelings, locking the muscles into fixed positions. In this way, a depressive or fearful attitude becomes built into the physical structure, which in turn maintains the mental attitude. Again, the mental and emotional transferring to the physical body. And in this way, our bodies both mirror grief and perpetuate it through patterns of physical holding. We need to release the stress and the emotion and move our bodies so that we can process and release grief. So can yoga help with grief and loss? My favorite article that I found on this is actually about a Buddhist treatment for grief. But Buddhist treatments and yogic interventions are so similar. So I really liked this one. In assessing a Buddhist treatment for bereavement and loss, the Mustard Seed Project, Niemer et al. Bring Buddhist perspectives to the bereaved because from a Buddhist perspective, grief becomes complicated because mourners have trouble accommodating the reality of impermanence in the face of deep and unwelcome change as they struggle to make sense of the event story of their loss and revise their life story and identity accordingly. And that is talking about, in a yoga perspective, a couple kleshas involved there. So in this one, they shared meditative interludes, didactic sharing, Dharma lessons, and informal didactics in a self-distancing perspective or removing themselves from the emotion of it to help participants reflect on the natural conditions of impermanence and limitations in a compassionate environment so that they were encouraged to cultivate a new self-narrative in the wake of loss. And although the trial only had 41 participants in 2 groups, the intervention showed significant decrease in grief-related suffering and corresponding increases in meaning-making and personal growth. So very linked to yoga therapy. Okay, let's get into the case study now. So the actual yoga therapy sessions. Okay, so the client is a 52-year-old female suffering from grief. Of note, I had been seeing this client for several months before her father's health took a turn. So I helped her through anticipatory grief and then into the grief section. She is married, no children, and has good familial support network. She came to yoga therapy to deal with symptoms of depression, vertigo, and deal with the imminent passing of her father. Client reports feelings of exhaustion, but also that she has stuck energy and a history of depression and vertigo from a previous trauma surrounding an accident and the injuries to her back that came with it. And the client reports that she had a feeling of not feeling safe in her body or able to rely on her body to do what she needed it to do. Client had been unable to work because of the grief and was finding the symptoms debilitating: nausea, depression, exhaustion, brain fog. And she's very concerned with being a burden to her family. While grief recovery was the client's primary focus, we were also able to help the client with some nervous system regulation and also with depression. Of note, the client was also her father's primary caregiver through his illness. Our assessments, we used a standard health intake, the Beck Anxiety Scale, Depression Scale, and the standard physical assessment, where I assessed her energetics, her breath, her gunas, her chakras, and her bliss assessment. So the client is a former yoga teacher, so she's got really good range of motion, but reports that she's feeling tighter, but her flexibility and strength are very good. Superficial back line and front line, both tight. Hips swing to the left, shoulders and head swing down and to the right. She has an injury to the right shoulder. And the client also reports that she has always turned to her yoga practice to give her support and stability, but needs more tools to help. She enjoys restorative yoga, yoga nidra, as well as affirmations, but she also seeks out other treatments like osteopaths, NATE, talk therapy, tapping, Reiki, to name a few. Okay. So any given day, we used a variety of techniques to meet this client where she was, and I also was able to offer something, and if it didn't work, we were able to pivot immediately. So for helped to reunite the koshas for an Annamaya kosha, I really focused on daily routine with her because she was struggling to get moving, get out of the depression, and also a specific style of yoga called grief yoga. For the pranamaya kosha, we focused on lots of different pranayam, chanting, and nervous system resetting techniques. Manamaya kosha, we did guided meditations and yoga nidra, affirmations, but also other things that would work in any given day. Vijnanamaya kosha, lots of yoga nidra and meditations, but also core belief and journaling happened in there. And Anandamaya kosha, the bliss level, connection with her family, friends, and also acts of service and volunteering. So session number 1, after her father's death, like I said, I had been seeing this client for a while. We did a check-in, and we also did a lot of down-regulating pranayama to get her out of the anxiety, holding mudra and doing various types of chanting. We also did some nervous system resetting work and yoga nidra and discussed her goal. At that time, her 3-month goal was to return to teaching yoga in 1 class per week in 3 months. I'm going to start to lump the sessions together because I saw her for 14 sessions over 1 year. Sessions 2 to 4, we actually did a lot of nervous system regulation techniques and up-regulation techniques. So chanting, mantra, holding mudra, movement sequence, trying to establish a daily routine at home. We also discussed keeping a food or energy journal. So how much water are you drinking? How much are you sleeping? What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? What you did, anything like that. And the client reported in this time, you brought me back to life. Okay, sessions 5 through 7, a client actually joined a group movement class. It was a circuit training class. So we actually pivoted to start working on nervous system resiliency to come down. So we were able to get her to go up in her nervous system, take action, get out there, start doing things, but then she found it hard to downshift. So to increase nervous system resiliency, we worked on down regulation, cooling pranayam, restorative yoga, open postures, things so that she could go to sleep after her evening yoga. So kirtan kriya, chanting, affirmations, chanting out loud, and also grounding nervous system regulation techniques like havening and things like that. And at this time, the client also started to discuss her changing role after losing her father. She'd already lost her mother, changing role of being the daughter. So, okay. Sessions 8 through 10. Again, the client started to feel low again. Her father's house was selling and it was the new year. So her father now died last year. She was feeling a lot of overwhelm with the sale of the house and everything. We also started to pivot into establishing a morning routine for her so that she could upregulate and get going during the day. We also started to give her variation. That Vata dosha, she really liked being able to have a routine that she could vary. She'd like to have lots of things that she could pick from. So we started to establish the pick 3 things and do those, whatever works for you on any given day. Chanting, affirmations, scheduling time for self-care was a really big thing for her that she needed to do. We also started to work on sankalpa setting a goal for herself, and affirmations. Client really likes affirmations. Next, she did also request a psoas shake. The client was familiar with this, so we were going to do one again. All right. Sessions 11 through 13. The client started to feel better, so she started to kind of branch out and do lots of different things, going to Reiki and sound healing and naturopath and osteopath and doing all these different things. And she was really doing lots of stuff, feeling good, still feeling the brain fog and things like that, but using the tools and enjoying the daily routine with variety. We were still doing nervous system tools, did the psoas shake, really working on nervous system resiliency so that she could flow with greater nervous system resiliency. And session 14 was actually our last session that focused on grief. Client didn't have a set daily routine yet, but she really, really was enjoying the variety of having things that she could pick from. Client also decided to start volunteering with Scouts Canada, and it really lit her up to even the thought of being able to volunteer and make a difference and help. And the client reported, I'm not teaching, I'm socializing more, I'm connecting with old friends and making new ones, and I am doing this without guilt. And that was the big thing for me. She was starting to really enjoy her life again. And this, like I said, this was the last session that focused on grief, and our sessions just kind of naturally segued into more focused on empowerment of herself and doing what she wanted to do and losing the guilt and losing the fear of change. So this took about a year. We worked a lot on neuroplasticity and switching the script within her head, applying more curiosity to her life. And she's still seeing me, but not nearly as much. During this 1 year section, she saw me 14 times in just over a year, so a little bit over once a month. And now we've turned again to more physical issues and again, empowering to give her self-treatments and more self-care. Okay. Again, the sessions took about 1 year. Everything started to change when she started to volunteer and really reach out to her own support network, her family. They're very close. Each appointment was very different. I really worked to meet her where she was in any given appointment, and I used a variety of techniques to help her incorporate the loss of her father and self-regulate. Having a wide variety of tools allowed me the freedom to be able to pivot with ease and without making the client feel shame or guilt if she didn't like something. I did not stick to a plan. If I had a sort of an outline of what I wanted to do that day, I just pivoted with no problem whatsoever. I didn't try and make her feel guilty. I met her where she was. So, grief is a long and winding road. There is no straight paths. There's ups, there's downs, there's you think you're getting better and then you go back down again. There's no getting over grief. It lives in the body and it needs to be incorporated. Life doesn't look the same afterwards. You are not the same person afterwards. Yoga therapy was really useful to get this client to come back to herself and start looking within instead of constantly seeking elsewhere for help and answers. This was hard and continuous work that required continual reinforcement and repetition, but in the end, it was extremely successful. We were able to, in the process, help the client with better emotional and nervous system regulation that has led to more self-reliance and inner resourcing. It's interesting that in the process of helping with grief, we were able to help the client become more mindful and disciplined in her everyday life. The client learned more about herself and who she is beyond the role of a daughter or the younger daughter, and having her father as a solid foundation of support. I really focused on listening with my heart and leading with my gut, and really leaning in to be able to pivot and adapt and give the client what she needed on any given day. And last but not least, this is my contact information if you would care to contact me. I'm always available if you'd like to reach out. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Katina. Let's leave that up for just a second. So in case anybody wants to screenshot your contact information. And remember that we will be taking questions at the end. We have one more presentation to go. And that was amazing. Thank you. Really interesting. Oops, gotta turn my camera back on. There I am. All right. Great job. Great job. All right, we have one more fabulous presentation to go. So we have Ashley Bishop, who is talking on menopause transition. My gosh, these have been all so interesting. Good. Spotlight you, Ashley.
Okay. And share screen. Where are we? Oh, here we go. I gotcha. All right. And slideshow. Okay, are we seeing the slide, the full slide?
Yep, we are seeing the full slide.
Awesome. Okay, I think that was the best I've ever done that.
That was the smoothest I've seen.
Woo.
Woo.
Presentation over.
Way to go, Ashley.
Woohoo.
I'm done. I've achieved. All right. So yoga therapy and the menopause transition. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge, that the literature really hasn't caught up with some of our more modern norms around gender. And so when I talk about menopause and women, I really do intend to include anyone who may have been assigned female at birth. That I want to acknowledge that, it's not just, women who identify as women as adults who go through this as well. So let's get started. Oh, diving right in, the menopause transition is traditionally defined in 3 distinct phases: perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. The graphic shown here divides these phases further to acknowledge the changes that begin occurring for many women as early as their 30s during the late reproductive phase. Changes often include irregular periods and memory problems. Perimenopause is marked by fluctuating hormone levels, varying cycle lengths, and with a host of side effects such as hot flushes and night sweats. Late perimenopause occurs when periods stretch further apart, 2 or more months. Menopause occurs when periods have stopped for at least 12 months. In this graphic, early menopause is a 5 to 8-year time frame when some perimenopause symptoms may still be present, but periods have ceased. A woman has arrived at late menopause when her symptoms have stabilized. And also of note, in the US, the average age for menopause is 51. So this could potentially be a 20-year-long phase of life, from that late reproductive phase all the way to through postmenopause. So this is a lengthy period of time under which, individuals go through momentous change. Okay. All right. Women start perimenopause at different ages. One may notice signs of progression towards menopause, such as menstrual irregularity, sometime in your 40s. That seems to be the norm. But some women notice changes as early as their mid-30s. The level of estrogen, the main female hormone in your body, rises and falls unevenly during perimenopause. Menstrual cycles may lengthen or shorten, and you may begin having menstrual cycles in which your ovaries don't release an egg. You may also experience menopause-like symptoms such as hot flushes, sleep problems, and vaginal dryness. After menopause, many symptoms experienced during perimenopause may persist and even worsen, and the risk of certain medical conditions increases. Examples include, but are not limited to, cardiovascular disease. When estrogen levels fall, fat can build up in the arteries, making them narrower and increasing the risk of heart attack. Stroke or coronary heart disease. This is because estrogen regulates cholesterol. So as estrogen levels fall, levels of LDL and triglycerides increase. During the first few years after menopause, bone density loss occurs at a rapid rate, increasing the risk of osteoporosis. And as the tissues of the vagina and urethra lose elasticity, urge incontinence and stress incontinence are common. Vaginal dryness from decreased moisture production and loss of elasticity can cause discomfort and slight bleeding during intercourse. Also, decreased sensation may reduce desire for sexual activity. And many women gain weight during the menopausal transition due to a slowing metabolism. In Ayurveda, menopause is explained as Rajanavruti, or one's arrival at the time of 50 years. Menopause is linked with the Vata dosha. Therefore, symptoms in the menopausal phase like insomnia, anxiety, urinary symptoms, osteoporotic changes are due to the dominance of Vata. Okay. So, menopause marks the beginning of the Vata time of life. Individuals who are already Vata dominant may experience aggravated Vata, which may manifest in a variety of symptoms over the course of the menopause transition. In order to pacify Vata during this time, the pacifiers really focus on nurturing stability. Pitta-dominant individuals entering the Vata phase of life may experience a rush of aggravated Pitta in the form of unstable Agni, or fire. Pittas are susceptible to excess fire in the form of bodily heat, digestive fluids, and other inflammatory conditions. To pacify Pitta, we want to focus on calming and cooling strategies. Kaphas find that the Vata actions of menopause push Kapha into imbalance. Kapha imbalance in menopause can result in lethargy, weight gain, and yeast or fungal infections. Kaphas are particularly susceptible to depression during this time and tend to isolate socially, pushing the imbalance further. Kaphas need to stimulate the mind and the body in order to pacify Kapha. Okay, so the benefits. Yoga is a natural remedy. A consistently regular yoga practice will help quiet the mind and body and may reduce the discomfort of commonly associated with the menopause transition. It also relieves stress. Breath work helps to lessen anxiety, quiet the mind, and help women achieve a calm mental state. Pranayama can also improve sleep quality and overall mood. Additionally, as osteoporosis risk increases exponentially during and after menopause, yoga provides opportunities for lower and upper body weight-bearing poses that strengthen bones. Some research shows blood pressure may increase after menopause due to the hormonal changes that take place in the body. A consistent practice may help promote better oxygenation and blood circulation throughout the body. Research shows that a frequent and consistent yoga practice may help relieve joint pain. In the Ayurvedic view, hot flushes are a result of excess of pitta, or fire, in the body that must be released. Yoga is considered an effective way to release that fire. In the Western view, yoga helps to regulate the nervous system, which reduces the number and severity of hot flushes. Yoga provides opportunities to build lean muscle mass and boost the metabolism. It also provides opportunities for mindfulness and self-awareness, which may encourage practitioners to examine and modify eating and drinking habits to achieve better health outcomes. While yoga is generally considered to be beneficial to those in menopausal transition, there are some exceptions of which practitioners must be mindful. Deep chest opening, for example, may initiate hot flushes for some women. Other menopause-related conditions may require modifications to practice safely. While yoga is beneficial for osteoporosis, there are certain caveats, especially for students in advanced stages of the disease. Practitioners, particularly those new to yoga, who suffer from osteoporosis, should avoid or modify certain yoga poses and practice because they can increase the risk of injury. So for spinal extension and flexion, poses that cause the back to round, such as extreme forward bends, full back bends, and deep side bends, can put stress on the lower back and lead to compression fractures. Inversions, or poses that put weight on the hands, such as handstands, can increase the risk of wrist fractures. Twisting the spine using gravity or leverage for rotation should be avoided. And repetitive movements, such as repeated rotations, as like a seated stretch class, should be avoided. Okay, the Kaleshasana. All right. All right. The Kaleshas describe the process of disease that occurs when we're not in a yogic state. The video, the lack of understanding of our true nature, such as clinging to self-images of the past. Asmita is the egoism or a way of thinking and acting in which the individual is the center of the world. This preoccupation with symptoms, clinging to the past or the me that I once was, is an example of asmita and how that intersects with menopause. Raga, the desire, is wanting to achieve, obtain, secure, and attach. This attachment to ideas and the stories that I have told myself are examples of raga. And devesha, which is aversion, displeasure, anger, the act of avoiding all that represents a threat. A survey by the British Menopause Society revealed that over 20% of the working women surveyed reported that menopause had affected their confidence at work. In the same survey, around half the women reported that menopause had had an impact on their home life, and just over a third said that it affected their social life. And abhinavesha, fear of death, which is that underlying existential anxiety, as menopause for many represents that transition from our youth or from our pitta time into our vata time of life. Ruminations on existence and anxiety tend to become common. Okay. All right, the koshas. So the physical body, I mean, we've already been over this. There's a lot that happens physically during menopause: the slow digestion, possible weight gain, joint pain, muscular pain, irregular periods, thinning hair, changes in bone and heart health, and the list goes on and on and on. These physical symptoms. The energy body, vasomotor symptoms such as hot flushes, low energy, and extreme fatigue, sleep disruptions. All of these energetic changes are very common during menopause. The mind-body, manomaya kosha, emotional changes, anxiety, depression, irritability, loss of self-esteem, all occur during the menopause transition for many. In the wisdom body, vijnanamaya kosha, brain fog is common. Is characterized by poor concentration. Some women may even experience reduced verbal memory, forgetting common words. Happens to me a lot. The bliss body, anandamaya kosha, as struggling as the physical and energetic, emotional and intellectual changes are, to access to bliss will be understandably difficult under the conditions of menopause. And of course, there's also the spiritual aspect of the and that existential anxiety. Oh, that's okay. And it had to happen. Something had to happen. All right. In the chakras, Muladhara, anxiety and depression that many women feel before and after the menopause transition is grounded in the root chakra, which is the chakra of safety, security, and our right to exist. Swadhisthana, supporting this chakra is so important for our general vitality, enthusiasm, desire, and love for life. More than a third of women in perimenopause or menopause report having sexual difficulties, and the main culprit is declining levels of estrogen. Manipura, this chakra is responsible for the Agni that is associated with hot flushes. When the chakra is out of balance during the menopause transition, Agni can become overactive, resulting in hot flushes and or digestive problems. Anahata, reconnecting with the heart chakra's energy can help during menopause by nurturing self-compassion, kindness, and forgiveness. The heart chakra is the center of unconditional love and compassion in the body. Treating oneself with the same love and care that would be given to a friend can open the door to inner healing and higher consciousness. In the Vishuddha, some women in menopause may have difficulty clearly articulating their thoughts and feelings, which can lead to frustration and inner turmoil. Working with the throat chakra can help one tap into their authentic voice and express themselves with clarity, honesty, and integrity. Ajna, As we journey through our menopause, the perception may become clouded by stories we tell ourselves, leading to feelings of confusion and uncertainty. Balancing the chakra is key to understanding and accepting the physical and emotional changes taking place during the menopause transition. Sahasrara, during menopause, activating the crown chakra can help women let go of attachments and surrender to the flow of life. An open crown chakra can help one feel connected to something greater than the self and encourage compassion and selflessness. Okay, so I have 4 pillars here. The axis vata during menopause transition can affect anyone regardless of the individual's natural constitution. Grounding practices like yin and restorative yoga are beneficial during this time in a woman's life to pacify the arid roughness of excess vata. For the excess fire that many women experience as they transition from their pitta season to vata, cooling practices like shitali and shitari are helpful. Kapha imbalance often requires the opposite of vata pitta, so rajas raising practices such as Kapalabhati may be included, but balance with grounding or cooling practices. Long-term balancing the doshas would be impossible without incorporating stress transforming practices, which can run the gamut of yogic approaches. Introspection is a key component of achieving the first 3 pillars. Clients must look inward to understand how menopause is impacting them from the inside out, as well as find solutions to the physical and emotional difficulties they face during this time. Okay. All right, so I did a group project. I did a case study, but I also had the opportunity to run a group. So presenting this today for a little bit of a break from the case studies, but I think this approach was kind of unique and interesting. So participants possess a range of pre-existing conditions, both related to perimenopause and menopause. And in addition to menopausal symptoms, one participant has been coping with rheumatoid arthritis for several years, and another was more recently diagnosed with hypertension. Several of the participants had physical injuries that would impact their practice. One suffers from occasional sciatica, another has experienced a rotator cuff injury, and another participant required accommodations for a previous foot injury and surgery. Most participants experience a range of typical menopausal symptoms, including hot flushes, headache, migraine, weight gain, digestive problems, sleep problems, fatigue, etc. And one participant is on hormone replacement therapy. Okay, so course objectives really build around the idea that we are headbutting up against the kleshas during this time, so really easing the suffering. So the first one, building awareness of patterns, beliefs, and habits that may impact one's overall well-being. Building yogic tools that tap into one's inner resources to overcome adversity and self-doubt, and developing yogic practices that ease the physical and emotional suffering caused by menopause and perimenopause symptoms. All right. So I structured this as 6 90-minute sessions over a course of 7 weeks. This happened to take place over the summer, so the 4th of July week was a bit of a break, and it worked out because we were able to get 3 weeks in before, a week off for 4th of July, and then 3 weeks in after. So this was a chakra-based course design. Started with a group share, which was usually about 15 minutes, a yin yoga session, which was around 45 minutes, and yoga nidra, which was around 30 minutes. And for an assessment, in addition to the intake process, I also used the stress inventory. The share circle was a challenge at first, but students began to open up by week 2. Homework was given at the end of each class in the form of a journal prompt. Students were not required to write and share their responses, but asked if they would like to discuss it the next week. Journal prompts focused on the class just completed. For example, at the end of week 3, students were asked to consider letting go of something that they have been holding on to that no longer serves them, and asked to consider an object, belief, or even a relationship. This became the discussion topic for week 4. Affirmation was given in each class and woven throughout the yin portion of the class when students were settled into their supported poses. Okay, so for this class, the techniques have been selected specifically for this participant group with the assumption that some are new to yoga. A chakra approach has been selected to balance and release the flow of energy, as menopause symptoms are a direct result of the cessation of ovarian estrogen production and a shift solely to adrenal estrogen function. A chakra-based approach encourages healthy adrenal function and encourages the endocrine system. So this is the chakra sequence from Eckhart Yoga's. It's their chakra yin sequence. So at each time we started in mountain to ground and center and begin our diaphragmatic breathing. And then we would go into chakra 1, Uttasana, chakra 2, supported butterfly, 3, reclining twist, 4 was supported sphinx, 5 was supported fish, 6 supported child's pose, and then 7 was seated meditation. So we did that sequence every single week. In seated meditation, I introduced some mudras. So you can see chakras 1 and 2. So week 1 and 2 were both yoni, 3 kali, 4 anahata, 5 vayu. And then the last class, which is chakras 6 and 7 combined, was chin. And the same idea for pranayama, changing each week, and we would practice our pranayama. So it's a little bit of a reversal from what we're used to with YogaFit, but it worked out, I think, really beautifully. So in order to a chakra was emphasized each week. So in week 1, chakra 1 had our forward fold, but then we also did dangling pose. And then we moved to toe squat. Now we did have one student who had a foot injury. It's actually it's healed from surgery, but not healed entirely. So we did have to modify this toe squat for her. And then week 2, the addition was deer pose. Week 3, twisted roots. I didn't have any students in this class who were osteoporotic, so I didn't have to modify. But this is an example of a pose where we would be using leverage for that twist. So we would definitely want to modify it for an osteoporosis student. Week 4, chakra 4, we used melting heart. I did have a student with a shoulder injury, so she moved from supported sphinx to supported seal instead of going into melting heart, because that probably would have been a little bit too intense for her. Chakra 5, supported fish, but I also offered supported bridge for the students who had some lower back pain and issues. And then in week 6, we added supported caterpillar to our practice. And of course, at the end, the final phase of the class was Yoga Nidra. It was a half an hour. So all of these practices come from Yoga Nidra Scripts by Tamara Verma. It's an excellent book. I recommend it to anyone who's looking for some really nice scripts across a variety of approaches. Okay. Oh, I keep clicking on the last. All right. So the outcomes. The pre and post assessment process was smooth. Only one reminder was necessary to gather all of the post assessments. The survey results were consistent between pre and post assessment with an overall improvement of 0.13. So not an impressive improvement, but there are limitations to conclusions that one can draw from such a small pool of participants. So the post assessment results are disappointing and not entirely consistent with the summative feedback and to the open-ended questions. So as you can see, the feedback before each class participation responses here are heartening and evidence that this was a valuable endeavor. Although I do wish the assessment scores gave more concrete evidence of this, there are factors that we cannot control inside of the yoga therapy process, such as personal circumstances. We cannot actually remove their stress. And this really did occur to me after I got these results, and I was, you know, scratching my head, and I realized that I am trying to measure stress response. So if I have an opportunity to do this again, I will probably really look more at HRV, pre and post practice. So I think that would probably give me some richer data and insight. And then, of course, thank you to everybody, just everyone in this program, especially our mentors and directors, our co-directors who hold all of us together. So this is such a tremendous experience. And
Amazing job, Ashley. That was so good, so interesting. Thank you. So I'm gonna just hold this up a couple more seconds here so someone can take a picture. Oh, I love that quote, Doris Day. All right, okay. I think they were good. And you can go ahead and stop screen share.
okay.
You can do that. All right, amazing. Just 5 wonderful presentations. Are there any questions that to pose here? I see some claps in the gallery. Angie says amazing. Thank you to all of you. Yeah, you guys, cohort 5, you've just done an amazing job, and this is really interesting. And to all of you that are listening, this is just a snapshot of the in-depth work and research that they have done. And just Felicia and I couldn't be more proud of you. So, wonderful job. All right. A little more says wonderful presentations. Such an amazing work on everyone's part. Yep. All right. Great job, everybody. Thank you, Haley. Thanks for coming in, everybody. All right. So if there aren't any questions here, just you guys that are attending and also people that are watching the recording, you can contact the presenters individually if you like, or you can always reach out to therapy@yogafit.com to get any more information. And we really thank you for coming here. We appreciate your attendance. And once again, congratulations, cohort 5, graduating. All right. So good night, everybody. I guess we'll call it a night here.
Right, good job.
Yes. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. Good job.
Right.
Ah, that was good.
That was great. Let's stop the recording.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me.